Welcome to BA Brew. I'm Jonathan.
I'm Pip.
And I'm Mike.
Today, we've got the absolute honour of having Pip Hall with us, the newly crowned BA of the Year, following the European conference just a few weeks ago. It seems like it was not so long ago. And we thought we'd invite Pip on to talk to us about her experience of getting to the position where not only did she apply, but she won the BA of the Year, but also we wanted to talk to Pip about her toolbox and the talk that she did at the BA conference with regard to stepping beyond your toolbox. So, Pip, can you tell us a bit about your journey to get to the position where you applied for and then you won the BA of the Year?
Yes, indeed I can. So I suppose I now realise that I've been a business analyst for as many years as I've been able to work out what I'm doing. And I know that's a common story for a lot of people. But I went on a fairly wiggly way to get to business analysis. I had a conventional education. Mum's very, very traditional. So I did GCSEs, A-levels in university and came out with a degree in town planning. So I did town planning for a couple of years. And I moved from there into a job where I was doing transport modelling for a local authority. So I was already at that point looking at analysing scenario analysis, data collection and analysis. And from there moved into traffic signals, designing, maintaining and controlling traffic signals. My favourite bit of that was maintenance, reacting to what was going on the ground, trying to make things better, continuous improvement. I loved it. I was there in that job from transport modelling until 5 years ago for 20 odd years. And during that time, I worked with a few people. The last big project I did was to renew our signal maintenance contracts, and I worked with some consultants who I got to know very well, and who arrived as a consultant, left as a friend. And was chatting to him one day, and he'd been doing some work on an organisational chart, and he asked me to proofread it. So I said to him, "What's a business analyst?" And he just looked at me and just grinned at me and went, "You." So, I started exploring, started looking into it, and the rest, as they say, is history. I left the job that I'd been in, that I loved, for 20 odd years, and I moved into talent to become a business analyst. So I did some work on a motorway comms contract on a transformation program, and now I find myself back in traffic signals, but trying on the supply side. So I'm the service provider that I wanted working with me when I was the customer in the local authority. So
Wow.
It's been good.
That's sort of your journey into business analysis, but what about the journey to recognise that you might want to apply for BA of the Year? And then how did it feel when you won the award as well?
My journey in the last few years has been astonishing. I've done more personal growth, reflecting in the last few years than I've done in a long time. And that's really when I met you, Jonathan, and you, Mike, and others of your colleagues, when I did my BA training I did my international diploma. And I started that just as COVID hit, which was brilliant because you guys went online. I don't have a particularly easy domestic life. So to be able to join you online meant that actually I could do all my training in quick succession, whereas had you still been in person, that wouldn't have been able to happen. And as I was doing the courses, both for the international diploma and then the advanced diploma, a lot of the things were making incredible sense to me, and they were things that my mind was doing anyway. And I just go, oh, so that tool and technique has got a name. I must remember that name. And in doing the exams, the challenge was always to remember the person whose model it was and the name of the model, rather than how to apply it or how to do it, because that was what my instinct was doing.
Wow.
And during that time, all of you gave me immense confidence in what I was doing. I remember starting the courses and starting the work at Talent, actually feeling a bit impostery, to be honest. I'm a bit of a fraud. Why am I here? What am I doing? And over the course of those couple of years, I realised I had a lot of knowledge, I had a lot of experience, I had a lot of skills that were relevant, and that actually I was a lot further ahead in my journey than I ever gave myself credit for. It was you, Jonathan, I think you are well aware, that helped me enormously and answered all my incessant questioning without the answers, got me to think about all sorts of things. And I talked through a lot of things with you, which was really valuable. And I remember us laughing one day, and you said you should apply. And I remember laughing it off, but actually whatever it was that you said made me think I should at least look at what was required to apply and be in for a chance of winning the award. And that's what I did. It was a fantastic experience, because we don't often spend a lot of time thinking about how good we are. We spend a lot of time thinking about how we need to do this and we need to do that better and we need to improve here and these are our weaknesses, but we don't spend very long actually acknowledging what our strengths are. And I really enjoyed the process of writing the application, because it gave me a real buzz. Do you know what? I have done all these things. I do have all these skills, and I have got all this experience, and it is of use to people, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be me rather than anybody else. And that was a big turning point for me.
Yeah. And then so you're going through this application process for BA of the Year, and at the same time you put yourself forward to speak at the European conference in business. I did. Process.
Yes.
So you like to make life easy for yourself, don't you?
I do, yes. I like a challenge. I seem to remember as well, Mr. Hunsley, you may have had something to do with that.
I suggested it might be a good idea for you to speak.
There was a bit of an ulterior motive. I wanted to speak. I have spoken at conferences before, so that was more inside. That was closer to my comfort zone than the award was. But it also, I was comfortable doing it, and it also meant that I would definitely be able to attend the conference. So there was a bit of that to it. In hindsight, I think I would have been able to attend if I'd just spoken to my manager about it. But that gave me, it did two things. It gave me that surety that if I got in, I'd be able to come and see and meet loads of people who in the profession that I'd recently joined. But also that I've got stuff to share. And it was part of my confidence boost. It was part of me challenging myself in saying, actually, if you think you're big and clever enough to go for the award, then, put your money where your mouth is, basically. What have you got to tell people? So,
and stretching yourself beyond your comfort zone and taking that risk, but backing yourself as well. Which is really, really positive.
And I've been doing some personal coaching work with me as the coachee, not the coach. And between you and he, my confidence was, I was suitably confident in my abilities, shall we say.
Which is brilliant. It's a brilliant place to be in.
Yeah.
So, Mike, as you know, Pip talked about the importance of bringing her whole self to work and thinking about a toolbox, not just in terms of the tools that you get in terms of reading from books and studying theory. And Mike, your toolkit from your life outside work, I think, is one of the biggest I'm aware of. Are you happy to, I don't know, where would you start in terms of one of your hobbies and what you've learned from a hobby that's helped you at work, Mike?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I think I was described as somebody who collects hobbies. My hobby is collecting hobbies. So I went at what's the most important one now? I guess I can't really pick one that's perhaps the most important. The two big ones at the moment for me are beekeeping and running. And actually, that's something I can bring to courses. I'm always saying on courses that combination of hobbies is really useful. When I don't do the beekeeping very well, I rely on my running to get away from bees. But I think I'm just interested in learning lots of stuff. So I do the beekeeping, I do running, I make all kinds of different foods with fruit and gins and wines and vodkas and cheese and whatever. But I enjoy the learning, and actually lots of those bits of learning come in useful at times. So and I guess some of it's about mindfulness as well, because you can go and apply yourself to something else, which gives you a chance to sort of step away from the work a bit, which can be really useful, because sometimes when you stop thinking about the work, you subconsciously are thinking about it, and you solve a problem that if you'd been focusing on it, you couldn't solve. But yeah, I mean, I think there's all sorts of things I've learned, because I think many years ago I was a first responder for working for East Midlands Ambulance Service. Well, not directly, I was a volunteer. So we'd go to people who called 999 where they couldn't get an ambulance to the folks quickly enough. And I think I learned from that a lot about dealing with people in some very challenging situations. So keeping calm. I did an advanced driving lessons to get my advanced driving test, to help me with that, so that when I did actually drive to those places, I didn't drive like a nutter, because I was keen to get there because the ambulance wasn't on the way. So I kind of learned that, which has then helped me with other things. So there's lots of things that all come together, I think. I don't think there's any one particular thing from any of the hobbies. It's just a combination of things. And it gives me plenty of stories to share. So.
It certainly does. And Pip, it's one of the things that resonated in terms of the talk that you did, in terms of thinking about different roles in your life and different hobbies, and what they give you, those roles or those hobbies, relative to your work as a BA practitioner. Are you able to pick one of your roles or one of your hobbies and just share a bit of insight for the audience?
Yeah, I think the most relatable, I mean, I use several examples in my talk, but the most relatable is that of a parent, you know, where there's all sorts of skills that come out of being a parent. And people laughed when we said about, you know, time management to get all the chores done. But it's true, you know, people do look down on me as a mother if my kids go to school in dirty uniform without a packed lunch. You know, it's not the done thing. But actually, there's, you know, when you're a parent, you share in the highs and the lows of family life with each of the different members of your family, whether that's your own children or being a child of my parents, for example. So actually, I think that in itself brings with it all sorts of skills and experiences that you draw on at work. So, you know, if you can share the elation of winning something, you know, when you win the battle but not the war. Yes, we've got that working, you know, we've made that improvement, we've got that person to change their mind or to come along the journey. Equally, if I'm in a disruptive workshop, I'm not adverse to using my mum Paddington Bear stare or my stern voice and saying, look here, we are here for a reason, you know, and you can waste all your time. I'm being paid to be here. You're not wasting your time. It's up to you. You know, is this a useful way or not? And it's about, you know, whilst it's funny, it's about having that authority. It's about commanding that presence. It's about being purposeful about what we're doing. And again, prioritizing things, you know, whether that is money or time or other resource, it's all, you know, being a member of a family is, and a parent in particular for me is massively useful.
I think that's really important, and actually you can completely underestimate that, because I hadn't really thought about that. But actually, there's loads of things that you think from parenting you learn, and you kind of take them for granted. Well, I do. I guess if I spend some time thinking about it. But there's probably lots of things I've learned, I've applied in various different environments, work environments. The one thing I haven't used, which is the thing I always used to say to my children, I've not used it in any workshops or any meetings, but they'll be proud of me. Well, I was quite proud of my son because he used it against me fairly recently.
So you hate that?
He said, I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed. So that was my dad's phrase. And it's kind of nice when your children use that back on you, but also I was disappointed with myself, not angry, just
Yeah. My daughter said to me the other day, really, Mum, if you said you're going to do something, you ought to do it. For cheek from my daughter.
Wow, but are those words that want to come out of your mouth?
Absolutely. Yeah, at some point.
So I was trying to think as you were talking, both of you, what the key skills I've learned as a parent, and I think empathy and listening, really kind of seeing the world from a child's perspective, their worries, their needs, their wants, and really trying to empathize and to listen. Not easy, but I think the number one thing that I've got out of being a parent is practice of negotiation. and I'm practicing every day, and I'm trying to
All day.
Yeah, possibly all day. Yes. Yeah, and my negotiation skills since becoming a parent have been tested and tested and practiced and practiced. And one day I'm hoping that I might be a good negotiator, but I'm still working on it. And
I think it's true. And patience.
patience, yeah,
I wouldn't think that people would describe me as patient. I do not describe myself as patient, but I do have patience when it is required. And that's something that's developed massively over the last 16 years since I've had children.
yeah,
You know, particularly with my daughter being neurodiverse, you know, she can teach the whole world about negotiation. You know, she's got a huge skill set with regards to getting her own way, and it's that patience and tolerance, that zone of tolerance that you learn about in one of the advanced modules is spot on.
It's I know we talked on the brew before, Pip, so you're returning to the brew, and we talked about stakeholders, but we think about these skills: empathy, listening, patience, assertiveness. They're all really key if we're going to manage and engage with stakeholders effectively.
Absolutely.
And it's core to our business analysis skill set. It's not an additional optional extension. It's absolutely core that we have those skills in our locker.
And we need to be approachable and relatable and vulnerable. You know, people say you need to lean in, be vulnerable to allow others to open up to you. And it's all, you know, having these different, being able to recognize that you have these different skills, I think, is really important to allow that. You may share a hobby, you may share a role in the community, or, you know, if you're able to talk in a way that makes you approachable rather than, you know, as a person rather than a professional, I find that it's invaluable.
Yeah.
It helps you. It does help you find connections with people. So I've had some situations where I've had a difficult stakeholder. What seemed like
such thing as a difficult stakeholder. Just had to put that in there.
Actually, I was probably the difficult stakeholder. But finding some connection, like we're both interested in running or beekeeping or whatever, you've then got you've got something that makes that person more of a person rather than just an obstacle to getting the job done. Which is, and actually that's probably one of the biggest things that I've learned to fill in the gaps between the tools that we have in the toolkit. It's actually about talking to people rather than talking to a role.
Yeah. And that's one of the key things we do, isn't it? We talk to people, but then we present and document and analyze in terms of roles. We divorce the personal from the professional, but it's really important, like you said, that people are people. And that's what I mean when I say about a sense of loss and those kind of real raw emotions. They don't happen to a role, but they do happen to a person.
Yeah. And then the other thing that really struck me about your talk was the focus on outcomes, Pip. And I'm not sure that it would have been easy to put together, but the examples of outcomes that you'd achieved by going beyond or stepping beyond your toolbox, by taking your whole self to work. Are you happy to share with the audience just one maybe example of an outcome that you'd achieved through taking your whole self to work and throwing the toolkit at a problem?
Yeah, I think the one that comes to mind most easily is an acquisition that we did recently. And it goes back to the family analogy. So this was an SME who'd been going for 30 odd years. And our organisation, which is 2,500-ish people, we're acquiring them. And to us on our side, there's not an us and them, but in terms of this story, on our side, we've got people with their specialists, their professional disciplines. So, you know, when you have a conversation to cover all bases, I've got a group of 15 different professionals I go to cover tax and finance and stock and health and safety and quality, you know, et cetera. Whereas you go to the owners and there's two people and they are all of those things in two people. So we can have a three-way conversation and we can cover all those bases off, but then I go and have a conversation and I need 15 people. And as far as I can understand, whilst the SME were very keen to be acquired by us, they thought they were getting cold feet because they thought we were taking too long and we were disinterested, when actually it was all the due process. That's all there for the right reason, all the governance procedures for the right reason. We're just taking their time. So I took all that knowledge. I've worked as an SME with SMEs and in SMEs, so I know how they work. I can empathise with the owners and the employees of such companies. But equally, I've worked in a massive local authority, and I now work in Tellent, who's got 2,500 employees. So I also know how they work. So it was about, doing the content, having the conversation with the owners, the content of which was important to them, in a way that allowed them to understand that we are interested, we are doing what we need to do. It just takes time. They haven't worked in a big corporate. They've always had their own business. And, back to the family analogy, this was their child. They've conceived and brought up, and they've been looking after day in, day out, 24/7 for the last 30 odd years. And all of a sudden, they just stood at the front door waving it goodbye. They don't know what's going to happen next. And it doesn't matter whether it's your child's first day at school or you're waving your teenager off to university. You lose that control, don't you? And you don't know what happens when you can't see them. And that's what they were feeling. They were feeling that sense of impending loss and didn't know what to do with it. And they thought, if you took your child into school and there was no teacher there and there was nobody at the door and you just said, yeah, go on in there, it's great, they'll see you soon. That's not what we do, is it? So they just needed to feel a bit of warmth and a bit of love and a bit of reassurance from us that we were taking them seriously and that we were really trying to put the things in place. And the outcome bit of that, rather than the output, the outcome bit of that is that we have a new set of technology and products that we've added to our own corporate toolbox. And we have a customer base that's broader than we did have, because they had customers that we don't. So they've now brought them together, and with a strong pipeline. And just last week or the week before, the government announced a £70 million investment in traffic signal infrastructure and, focusing on drivers. And this is, having acquired this business, is massive for us. It gives us loads of capabilities that we didn't previously have. So, and that's because I was able to go in and be Pip.
And it's interesting because I sometimes meet BAs and change professionals that say, well, it's not my job to do that, or I'm not allowed to do that. I wonder, how did you get the confidence to take your whole self to work and to really get to know those people and empathize and be aware and think of that context? Or is it just natural to you, Pip?
It is. It's my instinct. I trade a lot on my instinct. Mike, you were saying about, thinking about things when you're not thinking about things. I do a lot of thinking when I'm not thinking. And I am very willing to listen to what my instinct is telling me. I do back it up, obviously. I need to make sure that it's not sending me off in a crazy direction. But I'm me. And I'll wear my heart on my sleeve. If I'm upset, you see it. If I'm cross, you see it. If I'm happy, you see it. Yeah. So actually, it's just natural for me to be me wherever I am. I'm too tired to have different versions of me. Like, where am I supposed to be? What am I doing? Who am I supposed to be now? That's not what I'm about. So actually, I go in and I do have a laugh. My dad always had a laugh with people. And, I'm very much him in that regard. And I do use humour to cover up when I'm feeling uncomfortable. But over the last few years, I've needed to do that less and less. I just enjoy having a laugh with people. I enjoy talking to people. Wow. And it's less and less to cover up and more to open them up.
Yeah.
So
Mike, I had the pleasure of going on what I will call a Magic Mike walk through London. And so Mike was facilitating a walk through London at the European conference, and you gave me quite a lot of stick in the facilitation of the walk, but you just seemed so natural at doing it, Mike. It looked to me as someone observing as though you were absolutely comfortable in the zone and not worried about what people thought. And I was wondering if you could kind of share, where do you get that confidence from, Mike?
Do you know, I really don't know. After we did that walk at the conference, somebody said, "Oh, you're a really good tour guide. How many times have you done this before?" And I said, "This is the first time I've done it." And I think it's just from feeling comfortable being dealing with or being with lots of different people. I think probably having some of the work when I was going out as a first responder, you'd go into situations that were quite challenging, and I just would just chat with people and maybe have a laugh. I think beekeeping, I have to see what mood my bees are in and adjust what I'm doing. In the running, when I'm coaching at running, then I've been doing stuff with children as well as with adults. You just adjust to what you have, and I think at the conference it was just, we had a group of people who wanted to go out for a walk. I had planned the route. I knew where I was going. I did a little bit of Googling to come up with the script at each of the locations and just talked, and it just seemed to work. So I don't know. I think it was just feeling comfortable with people.
You take your lead from the atmosphere. So actually, a lot of people say to me, "Oh, can't believe you said that to those people." The director that I call Mr. Hall, it's unfortunate for him, he shares my surname, but in response, he calls me Mrs. Hall, and therefore we have an instant response. Because when I was working with him, I say, "Mr. Hall, I'm ever so disappointed. You promised you'd do that." And he'd say, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Hall, I'll go and do it now." And that's just fortunate because we share a name, but there's a lot of people who wouldn't do that. But actually, I have a healthy respect for everybody. And I expect a healthy respect back, but that doesn't mean that they're not people and that you can't enjoy your work. If you go in emotional intelligence, you go and you can read a room, can't you? I can tell if somebody's frustrated or upset or cross or happy or belligerent or whatever it is. It's being able to sense that and then respond to it. And that's why I think it's important to take your whole self, because if you've got a predefined way of being or a predetermined script to use, you can't, the likelihood of that being appropriate on every single occasion, I would suggest, is quite small. And therefore, you have to have a certain amount of confidence, whether it's false or not. You have to have a certain amount of confidence that says, actually, I own this room, I'm good enough to do this. They've asked me to do this for a reason. And here I am doing it in whichever way I see fit. Because if they didn't trust me to do that, I wouldn't be in this situation.
Yeah. You're making me, I'm reminded of a situation. I was quite a junior BA, Pip, and I was working on a workflow and image project. So a scanning center was sending documents around an insurance company. Anyway, this system had started to fall over. So we weren't able to manage claims as efficiently and effectively as we might otherwise. People aren't getting their claims dealt with because none of the materials were getting to the right people. Anyway, there was a computer services team that were looking at this incident of this system being down. And there was a particular manager in that team that we as a project team needed to go and speak to try and find out what the issue was and how we might resolve it. And nobody wanted to go and speak to them. And I didn't care. I didn't care if someone was angry or if they were shouting. I was confident going into a confrontational situation. At the time, I was quite heavily practicing martial arts, so I was fairly confident in my own abilities to look after myself. But there was no physical violent threats or anything like that. But I remember being sat with this particular stakeholder, and he sat opposite me, and every other word is a swear word. And he's extremely angry at what he perceives as a wrong, that his team's being blamed for system outages and whatnot. And I've not been party to blaming him for anything, and was just there to see if we could find out what was the cause of these problems with the system outages so that we could get the business back up and running in terms of dealing with claims. But in that moment, I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm going to use my martial arts confidence to deal with this stakeholder. It was just, he's an angry stakeholder. I've dealt with angry stakeholders before, and there was no threat of violence. He was just swearing and he was just venting. And it was a lot of venting, obviously. And I just kept to the focus of, right, so what can we do to move forward? How can we start to resolve this issue or challenge? I'm sure I frustrated him a lot because I wasn't mirroring or matching him. It wouldn't have got me very far. But it's interesting that just reflecting on it in this conversation, would I have had that confidence if I'd not been a more rounded human being through doing some of the hobbies that I'd been involved in? And you don't know. You don't know whether or not confrontation management's ever going to be useful at work or not, but it was in that instance.
Yeah, I'm very I'm very conscious that we're in a very comfortable situation here. We could chat for hours and hours because we know each other quite well. I can't even speak now. I've been talking so long, I've lost the ability.
Embrace yourself. It's all good.
What could possibly go wrong if I can't talk on my next course? But no, I'm conscious that we're running out of time. Really, we've gone on and chatted. So it's been really nice talking to you, Pip. I'd like to say a big thank you to our audience for joining us today. If you do have any ideas for future BA Brews, please drop us an email at, I've forgotten the email address as well, at babrew@assistkd.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe.